My name is Rhea Grant. I am 30 years old. The words hung in the air like smoke from the roast my mother had overcooked again, thick and choking as my father's hand slammed the stack of legal papers onto the linen tablecloth, scattering the silverware and sending a fork clattering to the hardwood floor. We're selling the cabin, Rhea, and the proceeds go straight to Lila's new studio downtown. It's her dream, and we've sunk enough into this family to know where the real future lies. My mother's eyes darted between us, her fingers twisting the napkin in her lap, while Lila sat across from me, her posture straight as a dancer's lips pressed into that practiced line of quiet entitlement, the one she'd worn since we were kids when she'd claim the last slice of pie without a second glance. The dining room in our family's old split-level house on the outskirts of Aurora felt smaller than ever, the walls closing in, with faded photos of Lila's ribbon-winning art shows and my own report cards tucked in the corners like afterthoughts. And in that split second, as the weight of their decision landed, not just the cabin my grandfather had left to both of us, but the quiet erasure of my voice in every choice they'd ever made, I felt the old fracture lines in my chest reopen sharp and unrelenting. This wasn't about a vacation spot in the Rockies anymore. It was the final tally of a lifetime where I'd been the reliable shadow funding their favorites with my silence and my savings. And now at this forced reunion dinner, 5 years after I'd walked away, they expected me to sign off on my own erasure one more time. If you've ever sat through a family meal where the main course is betrayal, served with a side of expectation, drop a comment below. Where are you tuning in from? And what's the one dish you'd refuse to swallow at a table like that? The pattern had woven itself into our lives long before that dinner, subtle at first, like threads pulling tighter with each year. Growing up in that same house with its creaky stairs and the faint scent of my mother's lavender candles, masking the tension, I watched as love flowed unevenly, always pooling around Lila, the older sister by 3 years, who could do no wrong in their eyes. From the outside, we were the picture of Midwestern normalcy barbecues in the backyard church. On Sundays, my father auto-coaching Little League while my mother, Mira, volunteered at the community center. But peel back the layers and every milestone skewed her way. When I was 10, they'd rerouted my piano recital savings $200 I'd scraped from birthday envelopes and odd jobs to cover Lila's emergency art supplies after she'd accidentally ruined a canvas worth 3 times that. I remembered standing in the kitchen clutching the piggy bank I'd painted with clumsy stars as my mother sighed and said, "Rhea, you're so practical. Lila needs this spark to shine." My father nodded over his coffee, muttering about investments in talent, and I swallowed the lump in my throat, telling myself it built character that one day they'd see the notes I played weren't just background music. By high school, the tilt was unmistakable. Lila got the full-ride scholarship to the Denver Art Institute announced with champagne toasts, and a scrapbook of her sketches, while my acceptance to the State University's engineering program earned a pat on the back and a used calculator from the garage sale bin. I'd spent nights tutoring neighbors' kids to cover books while she jetted off to workshops in Boulder, her Instagram glowing with praise from galleries that my parents framed on the mantel. I didn't resent her. Not really, not the way siblings do in movies with slamming doors and hurled accusations, but the quiet math of it all wore me down my efforts as the sturdy beam holding up her spotlight invisible until the structure threatened to collapse. That beam held until my mid-20s when the first real crack appeared, not with fanfare, but in the dry click of a bank statement arriving in the mail. I'd been working entry-level at a civil engineering firm in Aurora, pulling 60-hour weeks on bridge designs that kept interstates flowing, socking away every paycheck into a joint account my parents had insisted on for family emergencies. It was supposed to be our safety net, mine and Lila's, they'd said, when I turned 18, a way to pool resources like real adults. But one Tuesday afternoon, after a site visit left me dusted in construction grit, I logged in to find the balance gutted $15,000 gone transferred to cover Lila's down payment on a lease for her first solo gallery space in Lodo. The email from my father was curt. "She's on the cusp of something big, Rhea. You'll understand when you're older. This is how we lift each other." My mother followed up with a call, her voice syrupy with apology, explaining how Lila's vision couldn't wait, how I'd always been the saver, the one who wouldn't mind dipping into reserves for the greater good. I sat on the edge of my twin bed in the basement apartment I'd rented to escape the house, staring at the screen until the letters blurred, and for the first time, the resilience I'd armored myself with the straight A's handed over, like peace offerings. The weekends spent fixing the family van while Lila attended critique sessions felt like a trap I'd built myself. I didn't yell or demand repayment. Instead, I wired the remaining $5,000 to my own account, changed the login, and that night, over takeout lo mein eaten straight from the carton, I drafted the email that severed the ties. No more deposits, no more access, and a polite but firm request to remove me from the family group texts that had long devolved into Lila's update threads. It wasn't rage that drove me. It was the hollow realization that their family had always meant her future, my deferral. Denver proper didn't call to me like some neon-lit promised land. It arrived as a practical pivot, a city of jagged peaks and wide plains that mirrored the edges I'd started honing in myself. 2 months after that bank betrayal, with a resume polished from years of overlooked projects, I landed an interview at a mid-sized sustainable design firm in the Rhino district. The kind of place where exposed brick walls met solar panel mock-ups, and the team brewed coffee strong enough to fuel urban overhauls. The move from Aurora's cookie-cutter suburbs to a one-bedroom in Capitol Hill felt less like reinvention and more like exhaling public transit rumbling past craft breweries, morning jogs along the Platte River where the air carried hints of pine and exhaust, a rhythm that drowned out the echo of my parents' excuses. My new manager, Quinn Sloan, spotted the overachiever in me during the first week when I stayed late tweaking flood models for a Cherry Creek redevelopment. She slid a protein bar across my desk the next day, her no-nonsense bob framing a grin as she said, "Ideas don't flow on empty. We've got a team hike this weekend if you need to vent about whatever's got you grinding gears." It was the first time in years someone saw my drive not as a given, but as fuel worth tending. Then there was Kira Hale, the lead architect from the next cubicle over, who dragged me to trivia nights at a dive bar off Colfax, her laughter cutting through my guarded answers like sunlight through fog, and Lena Blaze, the environmental specialist, who'd become my go-to for late-night brainstorming sessions over virtual whiteboards, her dry wit turning technical jargon into inside jokes. They weren't replacements for blood, but in their casual check-ins, "How's the Highline prototype treating you?" or "Grab tacos after this." I found the steady regard I'd craved, the kind that didn't weigh my worth against anyone else's canvas. Nights in my apartment with its mismatched thrift furniture and a window framing the distant glow of Coors Field. I'd journal the day's wins, a client nod on my irrigation schematic, a promotion whisper from HR, the slow unfurling of confidence that didn't hinge on approval from afar. Healing crept in sideways, not in grand epiphanies, but in the accumulation of small reclamations like claiming the window seat on the light rail or finally hanging my own diplomas on the wall instead of stuffing them in a drawer. Therapy started as a firm perk. Quinn had pushed the EAP hotline after I mentioned a nightmare about drowning ledgers and unfolded into weekly slots with a counselor named Ellis, whose office overlooked Cheeseman Park and whose questions peeled back the myth I'd lived under that being the easy child meant I required less, when really it meant I'd learned to ration my needs like wartime supplies. "You're not unbreakable, Rhea," he'd say, his voice even as leaves skittered outside. "You're just skilled at pretending the cracks aren't there." Some sessions left me wrung out replaying the time my parents had cashed in my college fund bonds, $8,000 earmarked for my tuition to bail Lila out of a bad gallery contract she'd signed too eagerly, leaving me to community college loans that I'd paid off solo over 7 years of overtime. Others sparked clarity the way I'd volunteered for every family chore from mowing the lawn in 100-degree heat to mediating my parents' spats over bills, all to earn scraps of praise that went to Lila's latest exhibit anyway. By my second year in Denver, the firm had me spearheading a greenway project along the South Platte, coordinating with city planners and botanists to transform concrete corridors into native pollinator havens, and the paycheck bump $75,000 base plus bonuses let me buy out my lease early, turning the one-bedroom into a home with plants that thrived under my inconsistent care. Kira and Lena folded me into their orbit seamlessly, a girls' trip to Red Rocks for a concert under the stars where we screamed lyrics until our throats ached, or potlucks where Lena's spicy green chili tested my spice tolerance, and Kira's stories of botched builds had us in stitches. I started dating casually a barista with a tattoo of the state, outline a fellow engineer from a conference, but it was the solitude I cherished most evenings with a book on urban ecology and a glass of Pinot from a Larimer Square tasting room, the skyline's lights winking like conspirators in my quiet victories. To introduce new layers to the tension I wove in two characters absent from my original family script. My Aunt Vivian, my mother's older sister, who had always hovered on the periphery as the fun relative with her tales of European art tours, but who now emerged as a sharp wedge whispering in my parents' ears about family duty and how Lila's genius deserved every sacrifice. And Marcus, a junior developer at the firm who'd started as a mentee but quickly became a confidant, only to complicate things when he revealed he'd interned at Lila's gallery years back and carried guilt over witnessing her entitlement firsthand, his offhand comment at a team lunch. "Your sister's pieces are bold, but damn the drama behind them," forcing me to confront how far the ripples of favoritism had spread. Vivian's role escalated the emotional stakes during holiday calls. I'd half ignored her voicemails laced with guilt trips like, "Rhea blood is thicker than ink. Don't let pride rob us of unity," which my mother parroted verbatim, turning what might have been a clean break into a siege of passive-aggressive forwards from Lila's success feed. Marcus, meanwhile, added a twist of unexpected alliance, laced with risk after I shared fragments of the bank drain over beers at a Wincoop Brewing happy hour. He confessed to overhearing Otto bragging at a networking event about investing in the star, a revelation that both validated my hurt and tempted me toward pettier revenges I ultimately shelved. These additions didn't rewrite the core fracture, but amplified it, Vivian embodying the extended family's complicity, and Marcus the bridge between my past and present, his encouragement to chart your own blueprints, pushing me toward bolder designs in work and self. By year 3, I'd patented a modular rainwater harvesting system adapted for high-altitude droughts presented at an AC conference in Vail, where the applause felt earned, not borrowed, and the firm's partners floated equity talks that hinted at 6 figures. Denver had reshaped me, not through spectacle, but persistence, the bite of winter winds on Spear Boulevard sharpening my focus, the summer farmers markets at Union Station, reminding me abundance wasn't zero-sum. I adopted Pepper, a tabby with a notched ear who'd wandered into the alley behind my building, his purring insistence on lap time, teaching me affection without obligation. The wounds from childhood, the forgotten science fair, where my model volcano erupted perfectly, while Lila's finger painting won the blue ribbon, or the Christmas when my requested telescope became her astronomy elective fund, scarred over, not vanished, but the scar tissue grew flexible, allowing movement without constant ache. The invitation arrived on a crisp October morning, slipped into my mailbox amid utility bills and seed catalogs, a cream envelope embossed with gold script, Theo Lang's engagement party. My cousin on my father's side, the one relative who'd snuck me extra slices of pie at reunions and texted check-ins after I ghosted the family chat. It'd mean the world if you joined us. His note read, scrawled in that looping handwriting, no strings, just celebration, and maybe a chance to catch up on your trail-building wizardry. Theo had always been the outlier, the graphic designer in Fort Collins, who saw through the favoritism haze, once pulling me aside at a barbecue to say, "You're the backbone, Rhea. Don't let them bend you permanent." 5 years had etched changes I could measure in mirror glances, faint lines at my eyes from squinting at blueprints, a posture straighter from yoga classes Kira swore by. But the pull of his words tugged at the part of me that still wondered if proximity bred understanding. I paced my living room, pepper batting at the envelope's ribbon, weighing the risk, not reconciliation, but reconnaissance, a chance to stand in their orbit without orbiting. Vivian's influence loomed in the RSVP details she'd be hosting at her sprawling ranch style in Littleton, complete with string lights, and a caterer specializing in farm-to-table spreads, and Marcus's recent nudge over coffee. Facing ghosts builds better foundations. Tip the scale. I confirmed yes, booking a rideshare for the hour-long trek west on C470, and as the front range blurred past, the decision settled like ballast. I wasn't returning as the dutiful daughter, but as the engineer who'd rerouted her own rivers, ready to survey the damage without rebuilding bridges. The party sprawled across Vivian's backyard under a harvest moon, lanterns swaying in the breeze off the foothills. The air rich with grilled lamb and rosemary from the long communal tables laden with charcuterie boards and local microbrews. Guests milled in clusters, distant aunts in floral wraps, Theo's fiancé in a sundress patterned with Aspen's laughter, bubbling over the hum of a bluegrass quartet from a nearby gazebo. I arrived fashionably late in a simple sheath dress the color of sagebrush and flats, scuffed from sidewalks, scanning the crowd until Theo's bear hug enveloped me. His voice booming, "You made it beer or cider? And tell me about that pollinator corridor. It's genius." His warmth anchored me as we drifted toward the fire pits where flames crackled against the chill, and I fielded questions from his circle software devs from Boulder, a botanist from CSU, with answers that felt lighter than confession. Vivian spotted me first, her silver-streaked bob impeccable, as she glided over with a flute of sparkling rosé, her smile all teeth and calculation. "Rhea, darling, it's been ages. Your mother mentioned you're thriving." Such a practical path. The subtext landed like a poorly graded slope, praise laced with diminishment, and before I could deflect, the trio appeared at the table's edge, my parents' arms linked with Lila's. Her auburn hair piled in an effortless chignon, clad in a silk jumpsuit that screamed gallery opening chic. Otto's frame had softened around the middle, Mira's once vibrant curls now threaded with gray, and Lila, 33, now her face sharper with the awareness of someone who'd chased a claim without the drag of doubt, met my gaze with a flicker of something unreadable, perhaps remorse, perhaps rivalry, reignited. For the first hour, I navigated the edges, toasting Theo's ring, with a group of his college pals debating permeable pavements with the botanist over plates of heirloom tomato salad, the party's energy a buffer against collision. Marcus had begged off, attending too much family static for a Friday. He'd texted, but his absence let me breathe until Vivian's hand on my elbow steered me toward the dessert spread where petit fours glistened like false jewels. "Let's gather the grands," she murmured, her perfume cloying, and suddenly they were there, the four of us in a loose semicircle by the herb garden, the quartet's fiddle underscoring the awkward hush. My mother's voice broke, first tentative, as she adjusted her shawl against the evening dip. "Rhea, we didn't expect you." Theo kept it quiet. I nodded, sipping the dregs of my cider. I wanted to surprise him and see how everyone's holding up. Otto cleared his throat, his eyes on the firelight rather than me. "The cabin sale closes next week. Lila's studio needs the boost. It's prime space 3,000 square feet in Rhino. Lila shifted her fingers, tracing the stem of her glass. I didn't ask for it all, Rhea, just the seed money. The words echoed the old script, her denial a shield I'd seen crack under pressure before. But Vivian interjected smoothly, family pools resources. It's how we built this legacy. Your grandfather would want Lila's light to shine. Art feeds the soul, after all. The defense ignited something calibrated in me, not fury, but precision. The engineer's eye measuring loads and limits. I set my glass down on a nearby Adirondack chair, the clink drawing a few glances from passing guests, but my voice stayed level, threaded with the facts I'd rehearsed in therapy like elevations on a topo map. Legacy that's rich. Aunt Vivian, considering Grandpa left that cabin to both his granddaughters, equal shares 40 acres of aspen and creek frontage, not a blank check for one sister's vanity project. My mother inhaled sharply, her hand fluttering to her throat. Rhea, sweetheart, it was a family decision. Lila's on the verge of representation. We couldn't let opportunity slip. Otto nodded, his jaw set. You're established now with that firm of yours. Steady work, no risks. This evens the scales. Lila's eyes met mine, then wide with the echo of childhood guilt, but she said nothing, her silence complicity's quiet twin. I continued my tone, a steady grade, no steep drops into accusation. Evens. Let's map it out then. The piano fund at $200 for my lessons gone to her supplies. The bonds at $8,000 for my tuition redirected to her bad contract. And the joint account $15,000 I'd built brick by brick funneled to her lease without a whisper of consent. Now the cabin valued at $250,000, all proceeds to her dream, while I get the tax hit on the capital gains. Vivian's smile faltered, her interjection sharper. Details, Rhea, you're so good with numbers, but heart matters more. Lila inspires. The word hung, and I turned to my parents fully. The fire's glow casting their faces in flickering relief. Heart, I was the heart, the one who fixed the roof leaks while she sketched in the attic, who covered her overdrafts from your credit card because you called me reliable. But reliable meant expendable, a vault for your favorites. The garden seemed to contract around us, the quartet's melody fading into murmurs as a few relatives paused mid-conversation, sensing the undercurrent. My mother stepped forward, her eyes glistening not with tears but deflection. We thought you understood. Lila needed nurturing. You were always so independent. Otto grunted agreement. Strong stock like your grandfather. No need for coddling. Lila finally spoke, her voice low, threaded with the strain of someone who'd benefited from blindness. I told them to ask you about the cabin. I swear, Rhea, I pushed back. But her words dissolved against Vivian's arm around her shoulders. The aunt's coup of protecting talent is family, dear, a reinforcement that twisted the knife deeper. I held their gazes, the weight of 28 years compressing into this moment, not a tantrum, but a load-bearing truth. Independent, that's the ledger you balanced me as, the column that holds her as the capital T for triumph. But columns crack under uneven weight, and I've spent 5 years reinforcing mine without you. The cabin stays in my name. I've already filed the partition suit through a colleague in real estate law. Half the equity transfers to me by spring, no sale. Gasps rippled Mira's hand to her mouth, Otto's face draining of color, and Vivian's facade splintered, her retort barbed. Suing family over dirt and timber. Over equity, I corrected, the kind you never extended. The quartet struck up a livelier tune, guests drifting back to the dance floor, but the rift lingered, palpable as the chill seeping from the mountains. I didn't wait for pleas or bargains. Instead, I lifted my glass in a toast to Theo across the lawn, then turned away, the decision's finality a rebar core in my spine. In the days that followed, the fallout cascaded like a poorly drained slope, after rain, consequences pooling where neglect had eroded the ground. My parents' call came 2 nights later, routed through a blocked number I'd unblocked out of morbid curiosity. Otto's voice, gravelly, with unaccustomed vulnerability. Rhea Vivian's furious says you're tearing the family apart over sentiment, but the lawyer called. The suit's ironclad, and with the market dip forcing a sale now would net us less than half. Mira chimed in, her tone frayed. Lila's devastated. The studio lease hangs by a thread without that infusion. We assumed you'd come around. I sat on my balcony, overlooking the city lights twinkling toward the airport. Pepper curled at my feet and let the assumption land unanswered for a beat. Assumed I'd subsidize again. No, the partition holds. I'll buy out your half if it comes to auction, but Lila's dreams aren't my debits. Lila grabbed the phone, then her plea rushed. I didn't know about the bonds, Rhea, not fully. Mom downplayed it. Let me pay you back from the first show. But the offer rang hollow, laced with the same deferral and Vivian's extension-dialed barb. Ungrateful after all we've sacrificed, sealed it. I ended the call mid-sentence, blocking anew, and forwarded the suit details to Theo, who texted back a thumbs-up emoji and an invite to his cabin for Thanksgiving, no questions. The real unraveling hit them harder than words without the cabin proceeds. Lila's gallery faltered reviews panning her entitled aesthetic, amid whispers of nepotism-fueled hype, leading to lost sponsorships and a lease default that dragged my parents into cosigner liability court orders, garnishing Otto's pension by $3,000 monthly, until settled. Vivian exposed as the puppeteer faced her own backlash when extended kin distanced themselves. Her holiday newsletter met with crickets, her legacy tours canceled for lack of interest. By spring, as I closed on my half of the cabin, renovating it into a weekend retreat. With solar arrays and a native wildflower meadow, their emails trickled to pleas for mediation, which I archived unread. Marcus, overhearing the wrap-up at a firm mixer, raised a glass. You didn't burn the bridge, you just stopped pouring concrete into cracks. Denver's Rhythm resumed project deadlines, met Kira's promotion party at a Highlands Ranch, Lena's wedding, where I caught the bouquet by accident, each step a reinforcement, the old fractures now veins of quartz, strong in compression.